Okay, members, welcome to the Sutherland Area County Committee area. Sutherland Area County Committee. It's good to see you all here. We've got some apologies for absence. Deirdre is absent at the moment, but she's hoping to join us later on. She has another meeting that she's chairing herself, and I think that's the only absence we have. Linda is. I'm not seeing Linda's initials there. She was going to join us, but she's got another call as well, so she may or may not be able to join in as we go forward, but she should be with us by 11 o'clock at the latest, as I understand it. Okay, so item 2 on the agenda is the declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations they wish to declare? I'll take the silence to mean that there's none, so that's fine. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll go straight on to item 3, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Local Performance Report. And we have Jason Gardner with us to present the report to us. So the floor is all yours, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation to attend again. And members, thank you. First, I'll apologise that normally accompanying the report there is an overview of the report for myself. That hasn't appeared on this occasion, and I apologise for that. But what I would like to do is very quickly go through the report that I did send forward for any questions that you may have. So reporting on Q3, starting with accidental dwelling fires, each month has seen one across Sutherland, one fire in October, November and December. Slightly down on September, which saw 3. There were nothing significant in any of them. They were all very minor, very low key injury, with the exception of one, which was a domestic fire at Golspie, which I'll talk about with the next section. But generally, as a fire and rescue service, we're continually managing those most at risk through COVID. COVID has significantly impacted on the home safety preventative work that we've been able to do. We're continuing to prioritise those most at risk and those without fire alarm and without smoke detection in their homes. And we're working very, very closely with our partner agencies in social services and the police to support those. Our community safety advocates are working very, very hard in the communities, and I'm very, very pleased to say that we're now looking at bringing a community safety advocate into Dornoch to replace Andrew Mackay, who was promoted a year ago, and to have that community safety presence in Dornoch, hopefully later on in this year as the recruitment process goes out. Moving across to fatal accidental dwelling fires, which brings me with some sensitivity towards the fatal fire that we had in Golspie. A gentleman lost his life in an accidental. Oh, sorry, correction. A gentleman lost his life in a fire in a garage, which at this stage has been determined as accidental. Crews from Golspie, Helmsdale and Dornoch attended. I was the incident commander at that, and I am very, very aware that the gentleman's family is a member of the council as well. I believe his daughter works for Highland Council. So it was a very, very tragic incident, which I, as a fire and rescue service, at the time we did everything we could to support both the community and the immediate family, and that support will be ongoing. So that really is the first fatality since March 2017, which is very, very sad on our part. Non-fatal accidental dwelling fire casualties remains at 0 with none, and again that's testimony to the work that the community safety advocates do in and around the communities, working hard with people to offer advice and safety advice, and again hopefully we can boost that once we've got a process underway. Andrew Mackay has worked in Dornoch for 17 years and has been an exceptional asset, a really, really exceptional asset as a community safety advocate for 16 of those years. Andrew was promoted to a rural full-time watch commander post a year ago in the Dornoch cluster, and he supported me in my role as the station and district commander. Andrew put in a request to transfer and has now transferred to Thurso, and he's working out of Caithness. As a result of that transfer, Andrew has now been replaced with Watch Commander Cara Simpson, also very much like Andrew. She was a community safety advocate prior to being the rural full-time post, and she's working very, very hard with me to support the stations in the Dornoch and East Sutherland cluster. And I've got Watch Commander Patricia Ratowski, who supports Durness, Tong and Betty Hill up in the north of Sutherland. Deliberate fires, 0. We've had a really, really positive year in terms of supporting our partner agencies, the police, following a number of deliberate fires that were set last year, particularly around the golf club. And we've had some very, very positive outcomes from that. And the police are still working to sort of conclude and identify those responsible for those incidents. But as you would expect, over October, November, December, we had quite a wet winter, and deliberate wildfires certainly haven't been an issue. We have started to see the wildfire season a little bit earlier than usual, and quite surprisingly, a couple of weeks ago, attending wildfires while we've still got 6-8 inches of snow on the ground on the east coast, and we were quite busy over on the west dealing with those. RTCs, we saw a climb in RTCs November and December, and the vast majority of those looking at causes were weather related. We had some extremely low temperatures, and side roads in the A9 in some parts were frozen, and that created a number of incidents. As a fire and rescue service, as always, supporting our partner agencies, the police and Bear Scotland, to resolve those incidents, get intervention out there, get the roads gritted and salted, and to try and use social media to get to information out. And again, COVID's impacted on the amount of road safety information that we can deliver to communities and particularly to schools. But hopefully, as we move out of the lockdown, and when we move towards a normality, we can start again with the road safety support and the road safety advice. Unwanted fire alarms, we continue to work hard and working hard locally with some of those premises that regularly do have automatic fire alarms. We're working very, very closely with the care homes. These are not areas that we can reduce our attendance on or reduce the number of appliances that go. But we do work very, very closely with those care homes and identify methods of reducing the number of unwanted fire alarms that we attend. And it genuinely it is successful. We had a slight blip in November with 10, but out with that, we really are. And December was a very positive with 2. So we're working with organisations that are very open to take advice and to work with us to try and reduce that. Station availability, and I know this is possibly an area that will be of interest. Station availability in some areas has been very, very difficult in terms of during the initial lockdown, when people were furloughed, the station availability was very, very good because they weren't at their work, they were at home, and we were able to maintain a very good appliance availability across Sutherland. As people went back to work, and in a number of situations, people's circumstances have changed. work has become challenging, and I'll talk about one of my stations in particular, Dyness. I've lost personnel from Dyness who've had to move away to find work really because of the impact of COVID. I've taken regretfully a number of resignations from rural full-time RVDS staff who, because of the impact of COVID, have had to make alternative arrangements, and that's affected their availability and subsequently appliance availability. And as a knock-on, it also has had an impact on our ability to recruit. We've had an exceptionally positive outcome from a recruitment campaign at Bonner Bridge, and we've got personnel sitting waiting to go on a recruits course and get them on the run. And we're continually working with our colleagues in the training department to enable us to run COVID safe initial training courses and identify those that we need to prioritize. With that, and again, I do apologize that there wasn't another company report with it. Probably really, in as much as anything, we've had a very, very busy weekend this weekend with significant fires at Invergordon and across Sutherland. So with that, Chair, I can open it for any questions that either yourself or the members may have.
Jason, and thank you. A particular thank you to you and your colleagues across the Highlands for the work that you do on behalf of the residents of the Highlands and Sullivan in particular. With regards to the terribly tragic events of the fatal fire in Golspie, again, a particular thanks to the efforts of your guys. Can never be an easy thing for you to do, but as always, you go above and beyond in your support of the community, and it's greatly appreciated. Although we do appreciate the really tragic circumstances, which was very distressing for everybody concerned, and family in particular. On that, in your report, it's fatal. And hang on, I'll just get the next report here for what I'm looking for. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry, trying to do two things on a screen is never easy. Yeah, a fatal accidental dwelling fire casualties. On page 4, there isn't actually. It's just saying 0 for Q3. Is that just was it not counted as a dwelling fire, or what was the actual situation with that? I know it was in a garage, but how did it actually count in terms of your statistics? On mute, Jason. You're on mute, Jason.
And I was doing so well. I will, Chair. Yeah, I've asked for clarification on that. What I will do, with your permission, is I haven't had a response yet, but what I will do is I'll clarify that and I'll come back to you and I'll drop you an email and I'll come back with a written and so that you can circulate if that's okay. Apologies, I didn't get a chance to clarify it before the meeting.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, I'll go up to the floor to anybody else who would like to ask any questions or make any comments on the report. Can I have a show of hands? So, Councillor McGilvery.
Sure. Just a quick point. I'm interested in the 10 false alarms in November. Were these kind of spread around, or is a hotspot for such things, Jason?
There was a particular premise that did have a small spike. That was a care home, and we did have a number of incidents there as a result of a detector head, which we've now identified and has been replaced. But that was the primary reason for that jump on the November figures. But again, working with that organisation, we've identified it and hopefully we've resolved that.
Thank you for that. Hugh.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason, for the report, and thanks to all the staff that you manage as well for the work they do in Sutherland in particular and Highlands in general. Sorry about that. If I could just maybe touch on station availability first of all. And you mentioned Darnus. I was obviously devastated to see Derek go away as well from the village, but hopefully one day he'll get back. And I think that there is 2 or 3 lined up in Darnus, so that's looking promising to Schnow, and I'll push them. I always push them as hard as I can to get them over the line and the paperwork and things like that. So, but what worries me to Schnow is Tang, obviously, sitting at three members of staff. Now, it's a big area. Because Betty Hill is obviously struggling as well with 6, and the availability is what worries me. 34%, Tang 27. So you're looking in from Darnus to Thurso with Lairg intervening coming from the south. So I think if I can maybe speak to you after the meeting, and I have maybe one proposal that I could put forward. There's a big construction firm working in Tanks now, and we maybe need to get to speak to them to see if they can release some guys to maybe go through the training. And I think they're going to be there realistically for 2 or 3 years. So if we can maybe go down that avenue just now and see if we can, anything's better than nothing. Even if it's for a year, 18 months, it'll be good. But we'll do a wee bit of work on that, and I'll speak to you after the event as well today. Also, there was a while that the automatic fire alarm in Tang Station was causing a problem. I hope that's been resolved, because there's nothing worse than getting called an AFA, and especially when it belongs to the fire brigade as well. So I hope that's been resolved there. So and I see that Tang is one of the stations that are giving out COVID testing kits now. So I suppose the 3 members that are left are being put to good use. So but no, other than that, as I say, 1 or 2 things just concerning me on availability. It's where we are. It's strange times for everybody, and there's not a copious amount of work in these areas, and that's the biggest problem. And anybody that we can try and get in, we want to keep them. And as I say, the down situation with Derek moving south as well, it was really frustrating from my point of view to see him in the fire brigade, which I was obviously delighted to see, and then obviously having to leave through work. So it was strange. But as I say, if we can get the campaign going again and really try and get some more bodies in, it would make life a lot easier for everybody. Because I look at stations and I see some members that are beyond the 55 mark, and that's a worry as well. They're not going to last forever. So you need the youngsters to be coming in to be gaining experience with the boys that are already there. So so I'll not say any more on that, but just a few points there. Thanks for your report today.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Councillor. Just to kind of to offer a little bit of reassurance, if I can. I know, and I've spoken about Andrew Mackay, and Andrew really is key to this, because Andrew's now transferred, and he now comes under the command of my colleague, Station Commander Jim Donaldson up in Caithness. And I know when, as part of that handover of Andrew's role to Jim, we spoke long and hard. And I know one of the things that Jim did want to task Andrew with fairly quickly was starting to look at the recruitment around Tong, and particularly Betty Hill. They are challenging areas to recruit, but that was good to be a key focus of Andrew's. We are living in very strange times, and one of the things that we have done, again, you've touched on very innovatively, we're now using fire stations to forward COVID testing, to make COVID testing available for communities, and I think really from that point of view, that really is an extremely important role for our crews to undertake. As soon as that process is working, and Andrew and Cara have both been very key in developing the training packages for our personnel for that, focusing and getting it up and running. We will. You're absolutely right, Councillor. It is really challenging at the moment in terms of retaining some staff because of the impact of COVID, recruiting staff because of the impact of COVID, and training staff. And one of the key things we are very, very mindful of is that we've got to keep communities safe, and we've got to keep communities. We've got to try and limit the spread. So training is ongoing, but only absolutely critical training. And I'm pleased to say that the initial recruits course form part of that. And I believe the next course starts a week today. I believe we've got courses starting in Invergordon, Oban, Lerwick, and across the Highlands and Islands a week today. So we should start seeing some new personnel coming on. And yeah, it's about encouraging the new generation. And I certainly use social media a lot to promote that and encourage people to come and have a cup of tea and a talk to us when they can, socially distance permitting. Come and meet us, find out about the job, find out about the rewards, and come and join us. The door is always open. But thank you for that. And as I say, I'll keep you posted, and more than happy to meet you away from the table to discuss any ideas you've got, and to work with you to further those. Very much so.
Thank you for that. Linda, I saw your hand up. Will you take it down again, or do you want to speak?
It was already covered when Jason spoke at the last point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Okay, is there anybody else would like to say anything or ask any questions? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm assuming that's a no. So it just falls me to thank you once again, Jason, for attending. I really appreciate it. You're more than welcome to stay if you wish, but I've got a funny feeling you've got a lot more important things to be doing. But so thank you once again. It's good to see you here. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and members. I will slide out if you don't mind, but thank you for the opportunity again, and enjoy your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can get my agenda back up again. Here we go. All right. Item 4 on the agenda is remote learning, childcare in southern schools, and the North Area Manager and Head Teacher we're going to attend, and I think Alison Donald as well. I'm not seeing their names on the screen. Alison, are you here? I'm guessing that's
Richard, joining at 11:30.
11:30. Okay, we'll postpone this item to 11:30. Thank you, Hugh. I felt it. Okay. Yeah, I'm leaping around my screen here. It's very frustrating. Too many things open, I'm afraid. Okay, item number 5 is an update on implementation of the 20-mile-per-hour speed limits. Now, this is 3-4 paragraphs here for people to review, and hopefully everybody have a chance to do that. So from my perspective, there is an ongoing project into introducing 20-mile-per-hour speed limits in towns and villages. It seems to be quite slow in being rolled out. But I would like to see, especially once you're off the main road in the villages, Golspie, Dorna, Brora, Helmsdale, to see 20-mile-an-hour limits put in place. That's my personal opinion. I'd like to hear other folks' opinions on that. If anybody's got any comments they want to make, I'd be grateful to hear them. I presume you've all had a chance to read the few paragraphs that we have there. We don't have anybody to present this to us, but I believe that the project is being driven by the Safer Routes to Schools team within the Highland Council. Now, I just thought today that Carbridge is going to be having 20-mile-an-hour speed limits put through the village, which is good to hear, but I'd like to see myself this being rolled out a lot quicker, because I think it's a really important issue. I think of Golspie with the back road there, which is tends to be a little bit of a rat run, and people trying to get ahead of the traffic. Even with the speed bumps we have in it, people tend to race through there trying to get ahead of the traffic when there's lorries, etc. there. That course runs past both the high school and the primary school. So I would like to see a 20-mile-an-hour limit put onto that particular road. So I see a couple of hands coming up. So Hugh first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been working with a couple of the community councils in my community council's area, so they'll be quite happy to put some ideas forward in that. So certainly a bit proactive up here, so that's quite good. Thanks for that.
Thank you. And Jim.
Yeah, very much support this, Richard. Working with Editon, they're trying to get 20 MPHs inside the village itself, as well as the ongoing saga of the 40 limit on the A836. And I think they've actually funded their own 20s plenty signage within the village. Dornoch, again, Community Council are very keen to actually see a number of 20s or an extended 20 inside the limits of the borough. And I think the regulations currently do not permit as such, but I think this looks like a glimmer of hope, which I hope we can pursue. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jim. From my perspective, I think that I'd like to see this project being moving forward a lot more quickly. I know it's happening here, there, and everywhere. I know up in Caithness and in Wick, and there are very wide roads with 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on them, and it's good to see. But I'd like to see it in the villages as well. I think it's something that we really need to push for this project to be completed as quickly as possible. Fiona, it's good to see you as our eco or Southern Eco. This is something that concerns most councillors, and as we're all seeking for reductions in speed limits, particularly going through the villages. I mean, we have an issue with the main E9, by going through Golspie, Brora, and Helmsdale. But and then the difficulty is with that, it's a trunk road, and to try and get any reduction in speed limit is really difficult because there's lots of regulations there. But the council has control of the side roads around the villages, and we have a lot more influence in that respect. So anything you can do to push that forward would be excellent. I'd like to also put a motion from this committee, if I can get a seconder, that this project is pushed forward as quickly as possible within Sutherland, and consultation take place with all communities and around the villages across the county. So if I've got a seconder for that, put that as a star item for the going forward for the next council meeting. You?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Chair. Yeah, unless you're going to put it from us all, unless there's any other objections.
My intention would be to put it from us all, but as long as we've got the seconder, then we can put it forward. I don't have anybody, and I don't see any hands for anybody arguing against it. Fiona, have you got any issues that you're any concerns about that? Do you think you can do support us in that respect?
Yes, certainly can support you. The one thing that I've always wondered in relation to this, and it might be different for the small villages, is most of the 20 miles an hour is 24 hours a day. Now, I'm wondering in some of the larger areas whether that's necessary, or whether if you had a time round it, whether that would just create other issues. So it's just a wee query, because I've never seen, a bit like bus lanes, you know how in some places have bus lanes, they run at certain times. And I've never seen this around the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I just wondered if it might be too difficult to do or not what people want. But I can certainly support what you're doing. It was just a wee query from myself.
Oh, you'll be aware that all of the schools have 20-mile-an-hour speed limit signs which flash when schools are coming in and going out. And I think there is a big project at the moment to repair a lot of them, because a lot of them are broken down. But that's being carried out at the moment. So that's across all of the schools across Highland, as far as I'm aware. But in the village of Golspie, for example, we have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on the E9, and that is purely for as and when the schools come and go in. So 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, lunchtime, that sort of thing. But because it's a trunk road, there is no possibility of that ever being, well, I'm saying that no possibility. It's resisted by Transport Scotland to reduce the speed limit on the E9. although there is a big concern from local residents, because it is the E9, it's still the main road to the village, and there's a lot of traffic. So there are issues there. So, and you've got to take a note of that. If you can tell if my motion is competent or not, that would be very useful.
No, that's fine. That's been agreed by all members, so that'll be included in the minutes.
Great, and thank you for that. Okay, moving on. Unless anyone else has got anything to say about that particular item. We have on to item 6, which is the road structural maintenance. And we have Joanne Sullivan, I think, with us to talk us through this report. Joanne, are you there? Oh, there she is. Hi, Joanne, how are you?
Morning. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, thank you for this. You'll have all had the report regarding the structural maintenance review. It makes reference to the main report that was presented at the I&E committee, where significant amount of money, 17.2 million, was approved for spending on our roads. I haven't had definite figures yet, still haven't had them. There's a few technical issues in the background that are working away on, but I've been given an assurance that there will be revenue money as normal, which I did have a figure, I've lost it now, but in terms of the capital allocation which goes to the members, I'm expected in the order of 800,000 for the structural repair and 350,000 for surface dressing. That's the split I've been told to expect. It might be slightly more than that, but that's the figures we have. And then as went to the committee, there was also £100,000 per ward that the members can spend. So off the back of that, I've prepared the list, the prioritised list of all the schemes that we would be looking to do. We've tried to prioritise it. Now, the weather in the middle of February may have accelerated some of the roads and we haven't had a chance to get round them. So this was a prioritised list at the beginning of February when I had to submit the report. I didn't separate out anything specific for 100,000, but what I did do was identify which ward the works were in, so the members are aware of what's going on. So we've also, for the first time this year, given you an estimated scheme cost to give you an idea of where the money, how much money is expected to be spent on each scheme. Now, these are estimates, and we've already looked at the first one on the list, the Alton Main Street, and it's looking like we won't be spending that amount of money on the road. It'll be coming in slightly less. So there will be adjustments as the works roll on in terms of which jobs we do. But at the moment, we've done our best to prioritise them purely on engineering judgment. And so I'm asking you to have a look, see if you agree. We've tried to include footpaths in it this time for the first time. We're aware that they're something that hasn't been picked up on for a long time. Please be aware, although this list is extensive, it is not in any way exhaustive, because we haven't in the last year been able to get round every single road and categorise it and assess it. Yes, we do an inspection for a safety reason, but then to go out and do the engineering review of what work's needed, we've struggled this year with restrictions. So, and the weather in the last 2 or 3 weeks really has hammered some of our roads and accelerated the deterioration faster than we'd anticipated. Just for information, of the 150 jobs, 149 on there, the total works there would come to 10.3 million. Just to give you an idea of what we would need to do every single job on that. The only other thing is, as the jobs you go further down, the priorities have changed, which I've also indicated for you to give you an idea of the assessment we try to make and how some things have gotten worse and other roads have held up better or been overtaken. So I'll ask you to approve that work. So if you have any suggestions on where you would like your 100,000 spent, What would you like done with it? Something different? I'm happy to take questions.
James, I'll just a quick question first of all. I mean, the Main Street, obviously, it's how outdoor ultimately, and it's quite seriously damaged. To be honest. When do you expect work to begin on that?
Sorry, Richard, I can't make you out. You're very broken.
Sometimes it plays a power. Hi, can you hear me?
Still not brilliant. I'll do my best.
It's my internet isn't always the best. Yeah, you can just look at the time scale. I mean, the most costly piece of work that you have on your program there is for that Main Street. I was wondering when that work will commence.
Sorry, which street?
Alton Main, Susie.
Oh, the Alton Main. We're hoping to start that in March. I've been a wee bit cheeky because the capital for this financial year has been underspent. And I'm trying to capitalise on as much time as possible. So we're looking at starting on Alton Main around the 22nd of March. It's taking a little bit of programming and planning, and the intention is to start then and roll on into April to undertake some element of the capital work. Then look at surface dressing, and surface dressing is a weather dependent activity. We have a very short weather window, so we're looking at doing that sort of end of May, June, July time. If we leave it any longer, we're out with our window, and we struggle to do it. And then look at revisiting the capital structural works and doing some more of that towards the end of the summer. I'm mindful of the revenue work we have to do. We've just taken delivery of over 100 passing place signs, and it's the same squads that are going to be putting that work out. There'll be grass, the verge cuttings will need to be done, there'll be ditching to be done, and the guys are going to start looking for holidays as well. Not a lot have taken time off over the winter, and we're still technically in our winter period until the 17th of April. So there is a bit of trying to get ahead of the game, try and overlap with everything, but maybe stagger when we carry out the works and do it that way. But yeah, that's when we're hoping to start and do the Alton Main 22nd of March.
Okay, thanks. My concern, if you can hear me okay, is that seems to be the biggest issue for you here. You've got so many things to be doing with people that you have, and it's. I mean, are you fully resourced at the moment, or do you have any vacancies? What's the situation with that at the moment?
Currently, I have, as of Friday, one vacancy in Lerg. The new HR system and putting that proposal forward is I think it's freed up this morning, so I can actually submit the ATR for Lerg. In terms of being resourced, short answer, no. I don't think we've got enough men to deliver the amount of work we're going to do, but we are going to do our best. We are looking at, I'm going to say the dreaded word, overtime, and get that out, because I think, you know, the men are keen to work. We've got the skills in house. My intention is to keep as much of the work in house as absolutely possible. It might be a discussion that we look on taking some workers through an agency that way, rather than engaging a contractor. But we've got, you know, we've got white lining, we've got a hot box, we've got so much work that we want to do. And I would, you know, it might be come the end of the summer, we take a review and think, well, if we can't deliver it, we have to look at engaging it. But no, I think the resourcing is going to be interesting. As you know, we are very limited in the amount of 4 men per depot around the 10 depots in Sutherland. It doesn't give you much for pulling squads together, and when you do, you have to take them, you know, you bring them together to put a squad of 20 together to do the work. So it is challenging and it is interesting, but hopefully we'll be able to deliver it, but it's going to be a lot of juggling going on.
Thanks, Josie. From my perspective, I would definitely support you keeping the work in house as possible. And yeah, if you have to, as you say, the dreaded word overtime, then that's fine. But we've got to bear in mind that there's only so many hours in a week for an individual, and everybody's got to get some time off as well. So it's getting that balancing. It's really difficult. Anyway, I've got other hands up, so Jim. Jim,
was that me, Richard? I didn't catch that. Yeah.
Jim.
Thanks, Josie. Being cheeky alt in the main is very good with me. I'm very happy with that. Just as a rough guide, how far down your list that you've provided are you thinking about drawing the red line, roughly speaking? What's the other thing? I got confused there. This senility, don't worry about it. Red line. Oh yes, it's a good list to have out, a good list to know about. Can it be circulated to community councils with the proviso that is only a rough rule of thumb at the moment?
I'll answer the second one first. It's on the council website, Jim, so it's available to the public. So it's out there in there. In terms of a red line, as you notice, there's different activities on it. So surface dressing would be coming out the surface dressing budget, and at the current estimates, surface dressing is looking at the current this year's priority. That's items 6 and 7, 15, 16, 19, 22, 28, 29 and 34 is where the red line would be for surface dressing. Now you'll note I omitted the Altna-Hartner number 22, Altna-Hartner one. That's 18.5 kilometres we've identified, and we are in discussion with STTS to see about that being funded with the Timber Transport Fund. We've just highlighted that one, so because it's rather a large chunk as well, we've kind of held off on that one to see if we can get some support funding from that to carry out that one and not impact on the rest of it. In terms of the structural spend, which was about 800,000, got the Altna Main Street, the Craigton, Trantlemore, Moodablair, Lurigan, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 and 10 is where the red line would be on that one. All I would say is if jobs come in and we spend less, because this is a generous estimate, we would then just look to run down and do the next one.
You happy with that, Jim? Yeah. Hugh.
Yeah, thank you, Josie. Good morning. I was just wanting to, I understand obviously how it works on the budget for the surface dressing and overlay and that. And the one thing I would ask, and you haven't mentioned it yet, is that over the past, well, not the last 2 years, but prior to that, I think we should be treating tar as gold from now on, because there's been sort of side roads that have been done, and no disrespect to the people that live there, but 2 cars a day and they're getting body black tar for half a mile, 3/4 of a mile. So as I say, if we treat the tar that it's like gold from now on, I think we'll get the public back on side, because we'll start doing the areas that are needed to be done rather than sort of wasting it on areas that don't need it to be done. And I mean, obviously, I'll be quite honest, our roads up here are not too bad, but further so along the east you go, they certainly are bad. Betty Hill, Melvick area, Hallidale area. Are we still working with the wood lorries as well? Are we getting money from them, or is that finished? I'll probably have a few questions for you if you've got a pen. So if we're still getting money for the road up from Elmstill to Melvick, there's a few issues about Hallidale Hall, Trantlemore area. I see it's on here, but I'm not too sure where your start and stop is. So yeah, I mean, we are where we are with the list, and it's good that we have the list. We can see what's happening, but we know that we're not going to get too far down the list this year, but you've got to start somewhere. I think that's the important thing, that if we have a list, we can start. Materials is another thing that, if you have money, that I'd be quite happy to see materials coming to depots as well. Because the boys can't do anything without materials, and plants another thing. I mean, you know, we share with Caithness a lot of our plants, so I don't know, is that in your budget? That is it split between the budget and Southern and Caithness budget, or do you take it from one budget or the other? Question there for you. The council, I think, have realised that we don't have enough squads, men in the squads. I think there's maybe a move there. I'm hoping there's going to be a move there to increase that. You know, you say we have 4 in every depot, which is fine, but you know, gritting takes a lot out of men if there's not 4 with a license. You know, it's been a long winter for some of them. So that's and Strathy, I think you're one down. I did raise that question, and I don't know, I didn't really get an answer yet, but I think, you know, going forward, we might be able to get some more men into to the depots. Yeah, salt we got last year again was or in November. No, we got it in August actually. Was probably from the year before budget. So is that something that you've saved on? Or I think we got it from Lerg and Strathstephen. It was pretty poor, to be quite honest with you. We got fresh salt in the 1st of February, which made a big difference. It got spread rather than just been coming out of the gritter in a blob. So, you know, has that been a sort of saving by sending it up here? So yeah, probably that's about it. Happy with the road report as well for what you're going to do. Number 2, it's got reconstruction there. You can maybe enlighten me on that. What that is for the Bonner Bridge Craigtown route. I'm not sure how much reconstruction you're going to be doing, but yeah, I'll leave it at that, Sinead. Thanks for your work.
You want to come back on that just now?
Yeah, if I do, otherwise I'll forget my list. In terms of using tar like gold, I agree. Network wise, we have to look at the whole network in its entirety. We can't pick and choose roads. Yes, they've got different priorities, but we have to take an overall view of everything, and that's what this list is about, demonstrating that these are all the roads. We do have to try and look at everyone. It's your prerogative if you want to pull some higher up the list and move the priorities around. That is what, you know, it's presented to you for. STTS funding, that's the timber transport funding. Yes, there's out of our capital, strategic capital money, I think they keep $500,000 aside for match funding, and I think already this year it's 1.2 million has been the overall. So we've match funded it with greater. It's not just a like for like. I don't think the programme has been released. That's usually comes out as a press release. Robin Pope leads on that one. But yes, the Helmstone Strath, I put it forward every year. And this year what I'm hoping is by us doing some work, they look and match fund it and we get more you know, mile for our money up there, Hugh. That's the one area I'm looking for. Sutherland budget. The north of Southern was traditionally, well, up until recently was with Caithness. That's been separated out, so everything is coming out of the Sutherland budget for Sutherland now. We share the hot box. Well, hopefully we're going to share the hot box. We share the white liner. The gully gulper is on a rotation between Caithness and Sutherland, and when the guys use it, they put it on their job cards and it comes out of the correct budget at that point. So generally everything's coming out of where it should be in that respect. Salt. I had to make a decision because not last year, but the year before, there was a lot of salt hauled direct from Inverness at a huge cost by external contractors, and it had overspent on the salt haulage, so we had a significant amount around, so I distributed it around the county. That's what happened in the summer. It was also a way of utilising the men and the vehicles during COVID. That salt's now done. There is a push to look at it properly and have it done. It was just with the lockdown and the balance I had to find, that was what happened with the salt. But as you say, it wasn't of the best. How we store our own salt is another issue we've been trying to address. I don't know if you're aware, there is currently just about to be awarded a contract for 2 salt barns, one of which is going into Lairg and the other one will be going into Wick. So all our salt should be covered. It's not easy, and I gather with the weather up on the north coast with tarpaulin and tyres, the wind rips up and it becomes a challenge. So if we start with Lairg, which can be a central distribution, that's what is also hopefully going up in the next 2 or 3 months. So yes, I would agree with you, the salt wasn't the best, but it suffered from not being covered and a few other things, but there was a balance to be done operationally on that one. And Craigton reconstruct, that generally means more than just putting a layer of tar over. It means we have to dig down structurally to strengthen the road. The intention there is to, whatever we plane off the Altna Main, is to use the planings onto the Craigton to give it some strength before overlaying it. We've done it recently on the Fairy Glen at Spinningdale. So that hopefully then will offset the cost of the works at Craigton. But at the moment we haven't factored that in because it's, you know, we have to look at it as a standalone project. But yeah, it's just a little bit more work than putting a layer of tar over it, Hugh.
That's fine. Thank you.
Hi, Richard. I think you said it was me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. Sorry, Joanne, I haven't gone through the lines and that's the truth. So can I come back to you next week and discuss anything that comes up from there? But that's my bad. I just haven't got that far yet. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks, Josie. I don't see any other hands here. What I'd like to suggest is that we have a business meeting come up on the 15th, so I think something that as council members we should be discussing what we think our priorities are for the based on the list that you've given us, and then back to you and have a chat about it then, if that's okay with you. Do you have any other questions or points to be raised with Josie at the moment? Okay, members, we are to consider the report. Again. Through the proposed 2020 road maintenance program for Southern area, are we have that provision that we can also discuss this for business meeting going forward?
Yeah, happy. Agree with that.
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Okay, Josie, you're welcome to stay with us if you wish, but I suspect you probably got other things. So thank you very much for attending. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you. I know. Okay, we now have go to the item on the jumping back to my agenda. We have item 4, remote learning and childcare in Southern schools, and we do have the North Area Manager and head teacher for high school here to give us a verbal report. Alison and Catherine, so welcome both of you. I don't know who wants to go first, but I'll leave that to yourselves. On you go.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning to everybody. Today is the first part of the phased return to school, starting its second week, with some of our children and young people in school face-to-face and others continuing to learn remotely. So I'd like to give you a brief overview of this first phase and how remote learning has been going. And Catherine Wood, head teacher at the North Coast campus, will give you a picture of what's happening in her schools. I'm pleased to say last week's first phase back to school went smoothly. This was very much down to the careful planning of head teachers, following government guidelines, but also looking at their unique situation, the number of pupils and staff they have, the arrangement of classes, and the fact that some staff may still require to be shielding. Officers from transport, catering, cleaning, health and safety and education have worked closely to ensure services required are provided safely. As an additional measure to help manage associated risks, schools now have a stock of lateral flow device home testing kits for use for school staff and senior phase pupils twice a week. The pupils in school from the 22nd of February are a small number of senior secondary pupils, keeping it to a minimum of 8 to 10% at one time. The limited return of learners is for the purpose of completing the learning and teaching of critical practical work in relation to qualifications in 2021 that can only be carried out in school. In primary schools, the nursery to P3 children have returned, and for very small schools which have the entire primary cohort in a single class, all pupils have been allowed to be taught in schools. So in Sutherland, we have Rose Hall, Durness and Scowrie. They have all pupils back. In other schools where there's a P3 to 4 class with P3 in school and P4 at home learning remotely, it's expected that the class teacher will continue to plan for both these groups. But we also obviously need to take into account how that, her time management as well, and health and well-being. So there's local operational decisions are key here. For example, the teacher who provides the CCR, that's the non-class contact time, they may teach the P3 children 1 day a week to allow the P3-4 teacher to plan and have an element of live learning with their P4s. I've spoken to each of the head teachers in Sutherland, and the comments from our Sutherland head teachers on last week are very positive, all saying the partial return has been very successful, with pupils and staff delighted to be back at school and excited to see each other. Being face-to-face again has allowed teachers to measure engagement easier and monitor where the children are in their learning. The primary head teachers also say, however, that P4 to 7 are getting a bit frustrated and they would just love to get back to. In Sutherland, we also have around 7% of children and young people in school supervised by a skeleton staff, mainly of PSAs. These children and young people are either key worker children, aged between 3 and 14, for key workers who are working away from their home and have no other childcare provision, or some children and young people who would rely upon the care and protection provided by schools. Those identified as the most vulnerable are prioritised for an in-school support. Head teachers have used their local knowledge and that of partners to help identify these children and young people. Engagement and the health and well-being of children and young people is carefully monitored, and it may be that places are offered to families, pupils who are not coping well. As we know, primary 4 above are still remote learning, and how is that gone this second time round? For those who continue to work remotely from home, clear guidance on remote learning has been shared with all our head teachers in the Highlands. It's been based on Scottish Government guidance and highlighted by Education Scotland as good practice. Parents and carers have also been sent remote learning guidance, and we have regular area head teacher meetings to share practice and discuss challenges. Expectations on the amount of learning and how it is presented must be reasonable and manageable for pupils, parents and school staff. So since Christmas, staff has settled back into remote learning, putting into practice the guidance and lessons learned from the first lockdown. Support is given to those who struggle with devices or connectivity. In conversation with the Sutherland head teachers, the majority of schools have a device per pupil, and any connectivity issues have been overcome either with the use of the dongles provided to families, and in some areas where the internet is very poor, children and young people come into the school for part of their week. There's a clear expectation that the curriculum is to build on the recovery work that has been done in schools and should include a focus on promoting and developing skills that will support independent learning. Health and well-being remains a key priority. It's expected that learning at home activities will include opportunities to consolidate learning, extend and enhance learning, taking account of and meeting the needs of learners and their families. This may be delivered in a variety of ways, for example, through pre-recorded lessons, practical, open-ended activities, problem solving, presentations, lesson notes, diagrams, or links to useful websites, and may take place in a variety of learning spaces, including outdoors. The comments we've had from some of the Sutherland head teachers are very positive, saying that engagement is high, much higher than it was in the first lockdown. Registration on Google Classroom or Seesaw is completed by children each morning. There's a good standard of work being produced. Example timetables are put up to help pupils and parents organise their week, and it has more structure. There's more structure to the week. Live meets are organised with groups of pupils for 40-45 minutes. PSAs and teachers are doing one-to-one sessions with pupils online. And in particular, when children are struggling or feeling overwhelmed with the work or just being at home, then there's individual check-ins made to reassure and support. So we're still learning, building confidence and sharing what quality remote learning looks like. All schools have reflected on the remote learning last year and made changes to improve. Staff are calm and feeling more confident. Engagement is high, and those who are not engaging have regular communication support from staff in our schools. After Cabinet meets tomorrow, the First Minister will then make an announcement on next steps for schools, with the likelihood that there will be some changes to provision from the 15th of March. We will then plan and prepare with the schools for this next phase. So we'll go over to Catherine now, and she'll be able to give you a picture of what's happening in the North Coast campus. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Alison. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for the opportunity to come and tell you what we've been doing up here with the campus. I thought it might be preferable to give you something to look at other than me. So I've got a PowerPoint here, which I hope you'll be able to see. Alison, you'll need to tell me if you can see it, because I possibly won't know. Is that there, Alison?
It's coming. Yes, there it is. Wow.
Okay, right. Can I first point out my play on words there? I hope you're impressed. Lockdown lessons. Anyway, what I've done is try to put together a bit of a review of how the last year has been. Certainly for me, it's hard to believe it's been a year. It's been like no other year we've ever had before, and I'm sure you're all in exactly the same boat. So I just wanted to share with you how things have been across our campus. We have the Far High School and Primary School and ELC, and Tongue Primary School and ELC, and Melvick Primary School and ELC. So to start off with, just where were we when this all started, pre-lockdown? So our secondary pupils were in a very good position in that they all had been given Chromebooks, and that was a fabulous start. Our primary pupils were not in the same boat. Our P6 and 7 pupils all had Chromebooks, but while a number of others, we managed to find them Chromebooks, it certainly wasn't possible to have one-to-one devices. Most staff had a new laptop after the refresh, but not all, and some of them didn't work. Our PSAs, our classroom assistants, had very little experience of using Chromebooks, and some of our teachers had no experience at all of using the different platforms of online learning. Others were much farther along the line. And living where we live, Wi-Fi was a significant issue for us in the first period of lockdown. So our schools closed, and we very quickly had to put plans into place for how we were going to manage this. From the very beginning, our priority was health and well-being. We were really quite concerned about some of our families, about the expectations that seemed to be coming, particularly through social media, of all the wonderful things that families were doing at home. We were very worried that some of our families would be sitting thinking, well, we just can't do that and we're letting our children down. Really, the priority was health and well-being. So for that reason, we made up weekly grids, which we gave home to our parents, which had a range of different family learning activities on them, and the parents and the children could choose what they did. And I'll show you one of those in a wee minute. And that worked very well on many levels for us. It meant that children of different ages could take, oh, sorry, I'm in a school. Children of different ages could take part in the same activity. Parents could choose according to what they had available in their own homes, and they could do it at times that suited them rather than at timetable times. In addition, we had purchased subscriptions to Education City, which focuses on literacy and numeracy activities. in fun ways. So all our children had access to Education City and a list of various other resources and things that they could access online if they wanted to do specific tasks or take things further. But really we were concerned not to be putting excessive pressures on families who were already unsure of how they were going to cope. And I would put myself in there. I have 3 children and was trying to juggle a lot of things at the same time, and I very much appreciated that approach. Additionally, it meant that the staff were working together and putting things into the grid together across the campus. So for our staff, that was a further support strategy too. It was still a swift learning process, so those teachers who'd never used Chromebooks really had to get to know them pretty quickly. And I have to commend them in the ELC and the primary schools for how well they got to know the different suite of resources that Google offers. And that's the way that we've been offering online learning through Google. So once they felt more comfortable, we started to have some face-to-face lessons, and the feedback we had from parents was that that's really what they wanted, that they valued the chance to have that face-to-face check-in with their teacher. So as time went by in lockdown 1, we offered more face-to-face lessons as our staff became more comfortable using the systems that we had up. We were also operating welfare systems to keep an eye on children who we knew would be potentially struggling or who were facing issues which we would normally have been supporting them with in school. That worked very well. We were phoning home regularly, and we didn't have any requests to run hubs in any of the schools. So we didn't have a hub going in lockdown 1. One of the real priorities was communication between ourselves as staff, with the council, with parents who are really, facing this unknown time and really not sure how best to help their kids. And we had really good feedback in general from our parents during lockdown 1. One of the lovely things that they did across all of the schools was share what they were doing with their children with us. So this is an example of the grids. So this is 1 week's grid. So at the beginning of each week, you get a grid and choose the different activities. So you can see here lots and lots of different things: spelling activities, baking, giving your parents some peace and quiet for a while by reading a story to a younger brother and sister. Just a big range, and that changed every week. Here we have just a couple of the things that the kids got up to. So we had a campus-wide sports day where parents had to make their own sports activities. This is the chicken race, which was fabulous. And on the right-hand side, we have Angelo, who baked the biggest cookie I've ever seen. So lockdown 1 went well. We learned a lot from it, I would say, and then we returned to school. Before we came back, I would say that the most important thing was making sure that everybody knew what they were coming back to, that we were prepared. And because of that, I think that in general, our parents and our pupils came back confident and comfortable with what was going on, although I would say that there was some anxiety. Our P1s just took to it like ducks to water. We had transition in place through the whole year previously, so they knew what they were coming to, and they were fabulous when they came into school. As Alison said, our focus when we came back was on literacy, numeracy and health and well-being. And we were really looking to see each of our individual pupils, where they were, how they'd got on, what they needed to focus on after we got back. And we used the PEF funding that we get and the recovery funding, the additional recovery funding that we received this year, to maximise in-classroom support. So PSAs and additional learning support teacher part-time to support the children across the campus, and that's worked really well as ongoing now. We wanted to make sure the parents knew where their children were and how they were getting on. We couldn't have traditional parents' evenings, so instead we put quite a lot more information home than we might normally do in terms of what the children were working on, and also offered parents' evening appointments by telephone. And that was really, really well taken up, much higher than we would normally expect in the traditional parents' evenings. So it's something we would definitely want to continue considering as an option as we move forwards. So then we had lockdown 2. Things had changed quite a bit. The biggest change was that all of our children had a Chromebook across the primary schools. So that opened up lots of doors to us. And given that our children and our staff were much more comfortable with what was going to be expected of them, for lockdown 2, our focus was really on progressing learning obviously health and well-being still being a priority, but we wanted to make sure that children were taking their learning forwards. And for that reason, we took an individual school approach this time. So no campus grid. Each school would be putting out at the beginning or end of a week activities, dates for when things would be happening, Google Meets, etc. And I think you can see from the grid there that our attendance, and this is honestly a random week that we chose to make this bar graph from, attendance has been really high across the campus. And where there might be it looks like a dip, that's one pupil who didn't attend for one day. So we're really quite proud of how our children managed this. Common themes across the campus. We've had a lot more live lessons in lockdown 2, so face-to-face interactions for all of the pupils in the primary schools regularly. Also for our ELC pupils, lots of different sessions offered for them. We were really looking for high expectations, and our pupils met those. I think the quality that they got in terms of the learning provision was fabulous. I'm so proud of how well our staff have embraced the opportunities that online learning has offered. We have had significant differentiation throughout the campus. So that might be, for example, PSAs, taking children to focus on particular aspects of their learning. It could be one-to-one sessions with a teacher to look at areas that we know the children will need support with. And that has worked really well. And again, I'd like to commend the PSAs. They are amazing and they carry a lot. They're fabulous. Parent communication has been critical. Make sure that we tell parents what's going on as quickly as we can. Our Facebook traffic is high, and it's a really, really good way of contacting the majority of our parent community, but we have to be careful. We make sure we include everybody. So we're still putting out emails, sometimes letters as well for people who don't take emails. Continued with our welfare checks, and we had really positive parental feedback as a result of what we did. Things to learn still, but it went remarkably well. I would say it has been fabulous having the children back in, the P1s to 3s for the past week. It's lovely. I am now back in the school with a bit more noise, and it makes your heart glad, really, to see them face to face. Okay, so secondary, quite a different experience, obviously. In lockdown 1, we initially offered a timetable system, very much like children would follow in school. So lessons were posted online, teachers were there to support as and when required. Some teachers were offering online face-to-face learning, so lessons. That generally went well, but what we did discover was that it was perhaps a bit much for our pupils. I think we realised that whereas in a school, once a bell rings, pupils put jotters away and go home and forget about whatever it was that they did until the next time they come back to the class. When they're learning online and their lesson finishes, they still feel that they need to continue and finish the work, and that was putting too much pressure on our children. So we've changed things quite significantly for the second lockdown, and I'll explain that in a minute. We used Google, and we have learned a great deal about how to do online learning through Google. The things that my teachers have done are just amazing, honestly. We had really good attendance and engagement in lockdown 1, and I'll show you a graph for that in a wee minute. But again, need to reduce expectation. As with the primaries, we had quite robust welfare systems in place. Again, regular phone calls, check-ins, support in a range of ways. And no request for a hub for many of our secondary pupils or parents for lockdown 1. We put in place Google Guardian, which is a system whereby every Friday as a parent you would get an email telling you what your children had done, have still to do. So we were trying to make sure that we were working with parents, because we were quite aware that some children would claim that they were working and parents had no way of judging how well they were getting on or how much they were doing, and we wanted to support them with that. I think I have to acknowledge the pressures of the SQA system and everything that happened with the qualifications. I don't think there's anything more difficult you can do to a secondary teacher than ask them to make that decision. But our staff worked really well. They worked in conjunction with staff from across other schools, because we're generally single teacher departments here, and I'm very confident that the grades the children got were the ones that they deserved. We came back to school. children had made progress. Have to be really impressed with how well they had done. Some slower than others, some significantly less than others. When they came back, again, we had prepared our children and our parents for what they were coming to, and honestly, they took to the new rules very quickly and with very good grace. You know, a school full of teenagers asked to follow new rules, which asked them not to really be close to each other and goes against all of their natural instincts. I really think they did extremely well with that. Almost all of our children bounced back, but we have to acknowledge that some did not, and there are some who haven't been able to come back to school since lockdown 1, and those children are going to need quite a lot of ongoing support to ensure that they gain recognition for what they can achieve and whether we're going to get them back into school or not. We had still support from our partners, but with them not being able to come into school, it really wasn't just quite as effective as it probably would have been had they been able to come here in person. But health and safety was the priority, and you know, we had to work within the parameters that we were all following at the time. We didn't have a parents' evening as such because we weren't able to. Instead, we were putting reports home to parents with a section for them to ask questions if they had any, and then follow up of phone appointments if there were specific things to discuss. And once again, we had really good uptake for that. It was fantastic, and something we want to learn from. So lockdown 2, much better prepared. We knew really what we were going into. The lessons that my staff have offered in the high school have been fabulous. I'm in a very lucky position in that I have access to all of the Google Classroom, so I can see all of the lessons that are going on. And in addition, I have my own children, so I'm seeing what they're getting delivered. And it really is fabulous. I'm so proud of what they've managed to do. We changed the way in which we were timetabling, particularly for our BGE, for our S1 to 3 pupils. And it's worked much better this time round because the pressure has been reduced. So rather than having sessions throughout the week with their different teachers, they see their teacher for one morning or one afternoon for each subject over the course of the week, with some subjects rotated. And once they finish that block, that morning or the afternoon, they hand in what they've done, and that's the end of it. So there is no expectation that they carry on, and that has reduced the pressure significantly. We've had a number of parents contacting us to say that they really prefer it this way round. We again have had invaluable support from our PSAs. So our PSAs are joining the children when they're in their classes, they're supporting them, they're taking them for separate sessions as and when required. They are fabulous. We also have a very efficient system in place now for contacting parents. So whereas we had Google Guardian before, which was a once a week email, we now have a system whereby we contact parents immediately the next day if a child hasn't appeared or hasn't been engaging. So each teacher registers their children for their classes, and the next morning there's a phone call home if somebody hasn't appeared. And that means that we're able to pick things up very quickly. So if there are issues or Wi-Fi's not working or a problem with a Chromebook, or equally a child just has slept in, not managed to get out of their bed to get to their lesson, we're on it immediately, and we're working very much hand in hand with our parents to make sure that they're helping us and we're helping them by giving them the information. We have ongoing concerns, which we have to acknowledge, amongst our pupils about the qualification system and parents, and those are increasing as time goes on. And obviously our staff are also concerned to just know exactly what parameters they're going to be working within in terms of qualifications this year. We have got fabulous engagement and attendance in lockdown 2, and I think you'll see that from the grid. So again, this is totally randomly chosen week. So you can see the two different colours on the attendance and the engagement. The first colour is lockdown 1 and the second is lockdown 2. So you can see that we have really on the majority of the year groups improved things, but I would say that we had high attendance engagement throughout, really. S1 only has 1 bar because they were P7s in lockdown 1, and we don't have any information for them in terms of high schools, they weren't attending. Finally, lockdown lessons. I think the most important one is that our staff, our pupils and our parents and the communities we live in are amazing. They have been so supportive and worked so hard over the last year. Being a campus has been a real support for us. For example, we have a chat room where all staff are involved, PSAs, office, teachers, and there's regularly random questions and answers put up there which we would never have been able to help with. So for example, I'm getting a headache from looking at the screen, turn it down, you can make it yellow. It's just been such a support, and having different teachers with different skills has really helped everybody. Communication is key across the board, and I think that cannot be emphasised enough. There have been a number of advantages from online learning and many things that we would like to take forwards, but ultimately nothing beats face-to-face. We have discovered though that for our parents, offering things online really does open doors which they wouldn't have been able to get through before. I have never had such high parent council attendance. My parent councils are more active than they have ever been, and I think that's just fabulous, and we really want to carry that on once things return to normal. There are going to be long-term consequences for us all, and I think we have to look to how we're going to meet those, particularly in terms of mental health and well-being, and the impact that lockdown will have had on our children and our staff and our parents. But I do think that we're in a good place, and whilst things have gone well, I cannot wait to see the children back in school. Okay, I'll stop talking. I hope that's given you a flavour of what life has been like in our campus over the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I don't know if you really highlighted everything that's going on. I've been I've seen your trying to hear about my communications aren't very good, unfortunately, but I'll battle through. The presentation was excellent. Thank you very much for that. It was really good, and I have to congratulate you and all teaching staff for the work you've been doing in very, very challenging circumstances. It is not easy, and it continues not to be easy. We're still living in very challenging times. I've got myself once in primary 3 and other ones in primary 6, and the primary 3 is delighted to get back to school, absolutely cognitive, and my older grandson, he is desperate to get back as well, and hopefully in a couple of weeks' time they will get there. And I'm sure their parents are equally keen to get back as well. It's been a struggle all round. So thank you very much for that. Open up to the floor now, and I'll see Linda has her hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, obviously, a huge congratulations to Catherine, the team, and the wider school community. You have played a blinder. It looks like you took everything there was and thought, okay, this is it. How do we make the best of this? And there's been a lot of thises as you went along. And you've taken us on that journey, taken us through the story and told us, okay, this is where we were. This is what's happened. Here's what we learned. It's one of the best explanations I have heard, and I have now heard several dozens. It definitely is one of the, it's storytelling at its best, yeah? It has a beginning, a middle, an end, and then future thoughts. And you can follow it. I actually felt, I wouldn't say it went quite as far as to make me want to go back into the classroom, but nothing like as resistant as I would have been. So there's definitely a 10 out of 10 there. Catherine, what can I say? You've got it covered end to end. I know you've got a terrific team. You work well together. You work hard to make it a terrific team. So an awful lot to be proud of and for. Huge well done, and I hope you take that back to Alison and the management team, and Catherine, you take it back to your team, parents, pupils, etc. You've done a terrific job. Huge well done.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate
it. Hugh.
Yep, I was just to echo what Linda said there just now, to be quite honest with you. Excellent presentation, and really good to see the work that you've done. It's not easy. It's been a difficult period for everybody in general, and especially for kids and parents as well as the teachers. No, big thanks for everything you've done, and thank you for the presentation. It's been really good and easy to follow. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Deirdre.
Catherine, yes, it's just to add best wishes from the East Coast here. It was wonderful to hear your presentation. It really was. You know, it was so proactive and positive and imaginative. You know, how you were creating opportunities along the way, you know, in line with your learning. You know, it must have been so reassuring for your parents, your children and the staff. And it was equally, great to hear about the new opportunities which have arisen along the way, and in particular, engagement with parents, which, as we know, is so important. So one of the unintended consequences of COVID, but that it bodes well for the future. So thank you. That really was tremendous. And again, I'd like to convey good wishes to your staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really nice of you. Thank you.
And
yeah, just a quick summary from the Dornoch Firth campus. Your story reflects very much my direct experience with my grandchildren, especially next door. The primary 3 granddaughter was absolutely bouncing to get back into school again. Primary 4 to 7, I know what you're saying. The support is there, but granddaughter in P4 is having to be driven through the support rather than just being as motivated. But the big surprise was my grandson in S1, who was just so totally motivated and responsible that it really took me by surprise. So there's no driven required, totally on board, totally taking on board what's there, and the maturity beyond his years. So I hope that goes across other pupils at that stage too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, that's one of the strangest things that we've discovered, is that some of our children who might have been the least conscientious, I would say, and not paying as much attention as you might have wanted them to do in class, have been the most phenomenal at online learning, and have just come through with huge, well, they've just been amazing. They really have just amazed me at how well they've done. They've had 100% attendance, they've got 100% engagement, and these are the children who normally would have been in my office for a quiet chat about talking during lessons, etc. So yeah, and I appreciate it, Jim. I have a child in primary 6, and I also have one in S2 and one in S3. So I get it from that perspective, and I think as a parent I can't wait for them to be back as well. So hopefully we'll get good news soon.
Thank you very much indeed, Catherine. And yes, again, thank you all our teaching staff for the tremendous work everybody's doing. I really also and Solon in particular. So thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. So I don't see other hands, so I'm assuming there's no more questions for you. So thank you for attending. It's great. Appreciate it. If you're more than welcome to stay, but as I said to our other attendees, especially for the other things you should be doing as well. So if you leave, that's fine. So thanks once again.
Thank you.
Okay, members, moving on to on the agenda. I can just my agenda here. 7 is the Dornoch Common Good consultation on proposed change of use of area of Dornoch Links for the location of a takeaway food ban. Now we have Sarah with us. I'm not quite sure Phil who's going to take the lead on that.
Morning, members. Yes, there's a report before you on the consultation in respect of the food van proposal for Dornoch Links. The consultation also has an attachment to it, an appendix, which shows the outcome of the consultation that took place, the type of comments that we were getting in, and the action that was taken as a result of those comments. So the report itself, I'm not proposing to go over the report again, because obviously it gives you the history of what the background of the consultation was all about, and it's a fairly brief, succinct report. So it is a proposal that's been received from a member of the community, and we went out to consultation because it constitutes a change of use. The land having been public amenity land, when you then removing it from the availability to members of the public to use it for what they might have used it for before. So that was the basis on which we went out to consult. The consultation received a reasonable amount of responses. It received 18 responses. There were some very nice supportive responses, as you can see in the analysis document. The main issue that cropped up in that analysis when we looked at the responses was a question of location, where we were initially proposing the food van should be sited. and issues to do with traffic. And those were all taken on board as very valid proposals and suggestions to be received. So on the basis of that, we looked at what our response to that would be. And Phil Tomlin and Chris Holmes, an estates officer, and the proposed tenant looked at the other options and considered that an appropriate action should be to move the location that was being proposed to be given for the siting of the food van. So a further location has now been proposed that allays the fears of the issues that were being raised during the consultation. It's only 50 yards away from the original site, and in all other respects the consultation is identical. So I considered whether or not it was a significant change, and I don't think it is a significant change such as we would need to go through the whole process again. It's a small change. It's a movement 50 yards to the north into perhaps a more suitable location, and in all other respects the proposal is identical. So members, you have before you the document on the appendix, which shows you what the next steps are concerned, and they obviously ask you to consider whether or not you're happy with that change of location, because that wasn't what was contained in the original consultation document. So that does have to be considered, and thereafter to consider your decision on whether or not you're happy for the proposal to go ahead. The links land is inalienable common good land, so whilst it might seem a bit heavy-handed, we will have to go to court because it is a change of use. We are looking to appropriate the use of that land from public amenity land to reserving it for a site for the siting of the food van. So although initially the lease is being proposed for quite a short term, it is unfortunately one of those situations that gets caught by the court process. So it almost seems that we're having to go over so many hurdles when it's such a good proposal. But that's unfortunately the position that we're in on this, and it's one of those occasions where you can understand it for a long lease, but where it's initially going to be a short lease, it's a shame that it can't perhaps just flow straight ahead. But the courts have now got processes in place to deal with the fact that a lot of the courts are still closed or on minimal public allowed in, so we can do all of our advert that we need to via the court website. And in fact, the last one of these that we did, the hearing for the actual application, took place over the telephone. So they've got their systems up and running now, so once we're able to process it, things should flow fairly smoothly. So the initial stage, members, for you is to consider whether or not you're happy for the proposal to go ahead. So I think that's all I would really like to say. The documents that I've put forward are drafted in a way that give you all the information you need. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. First of all, apologies because I've fixed my camera off to try to improve my audio. So I no problems not being able to see. I would say what I read of the report. Can you mute your microphone, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Feedback there. Yeah, the report is very good. It's very clear. It answers all the questions I had, and I have no issues with this whatsoever. And the objections that were put forward have all been through and clearly answered. So thank you very much for that and the effort to put into that. I see that someone has his hand up, so I'll put it over to him now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. I support moving ahead as you suggest. I think your recommendations are fine, and I think the new site is a much more positive than the previous one, and addresses some of the concerns that were raised. And also, although it's a short-term lease, there's potential there once the guys jump through the hoops to actually extend this, I suppose, once the pilot year is over. And as you also point out, it's up to the applicant to actually deal with planning and licensing issues. And we are only concerned with actually approving the way ahead for the new use of this, the lease on this bit of common good plan. So I'm delighted with your report. I think we can proceed on the basis you suggest. Thank you.
for that. Yeah. Yes, that's my thoughts as well. I'm happy to proceed with it as suggested. I don't see any other hands. Does anybody have any further questions or concerns? Oh, that's fine. Well, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Just to clarify then, we are being asked to just get fight the camera machine here. We'll note the outcome of the consultation process undertaken in Appendix 1. Agree the suggested amendment to the proposal regarding location. Agree the proposal to change the amended area of the takeaway food van, subject to the consent of the Chair Court being obtained, and note that other permissions may be required to planning and environmental health in connection with the operation of the business. However, these are separate processes and procedures to that required under community legislation. Are we all happy with the numbers?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Oh, that's great, Sarah. Thank you for that. And we'll move on to item 7B on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, I hope that Richard is there and can hear us. Quickly then, the report has the annual report, the Donald Common Good annual report for 2019-20. The highlights are a surplus for the year of 36,464 and a usable cash reserve balance on the 31st of March 2020 of £314,995. The report also presents the proposed budget for 21-22. There are two areas of significant increase in proposed expenditure. The first is property and maintenance costs, and the increase reflects the maintenance costs incurred over the past 2 to 3 years, and also to cover surveyor fees, which are now internally recharged. The other area of significant increase is the grants and contribution budget line. Members are referred to section 7.5 of the report. The allocation to community grants remains unchanged at 25,000. However, in addition, the following projects are budgeted for. The History Links Museum extension. This was approved by County Committee on the 9th of July 2020. 27,365 was approved, and to date only 6,365 has been drawn down, leaving a balance of 21,000 to be claimed. The second is the Project Curlew Phase 1 car and coach park, and again this was approved on the 9th of July 2020. 39,760 was approved, and to date no funds have been drawn down, so that is carried forward. The final project is the refurbishment of Dornoch Square public toilets. The report outlines the history of the project, which will deliver internal refurbishment only of the toilet block and requires a budget of 44,000. The Council has commissioned a structural survey of the building to ensure more significant works are not required, and the project will only proceed on receipt of a satisfactory condition survey. Overall, members are asked to note the proposed budget will lead to an excess of expenditure over income of £97,660, which will be required to be funded from reserves. This is affordable, but it would not be sustainable for the fund to run an annual deficit on a recurring basis. Dornoch Community Council has been consulted regarding the budget and is supportive of the budget overall and the use of common good funding for the refurbishment of the toilets in particular. The final part of the report, members, is the Q3 monitoring report. The latest figures to the end of Q3 are presented in Appendix 3. The projected outturn is broadly in line with budget, with the exception of miscellaneous costs. Contributory factors to the projected variance include repair of the bank steps to ensure the safety of pedestrians, unexpected additional work required to the bank of sections of Dornoch Burn during the periodic clean. Other property costs incurred include realigning parking at Dornoch Beach Play Park and surveying and legal fees. Despite this, the fund is projected to support an in-year surplus of £2,100. Okay, thank you, members.
I don't know if you can hear me or not. Is my audio working better or not? I'm not quite sure. Any Can you?
Sorry, Richard, it's not clear at all.
No. Okay. Hannah 26. Mike, can you hear me better now? No, it's rubbish. Okay.
I heard that.
I'm getting frustrated now. Okay. Sorry, I see Jim stand up. You want to go, Jim?
Yeah, just to thank Phil for an excellent report there, and especially if I can have merited my full commendation for the amount of work he did recently to pull in the public toilets project. And it was a last-minute effort to kind of gather the community council together to support what he has in place there, and it's greatly appreciated. This has been a long-running story since my time in the community council in the 1990s, and there's just a glimmer of hope if we can get through the structural survey to actually see some improvements being made. And I notice also that we seem to have extra money coming in for public conveniences in our forthcoming budget. So perhaps we can actually look around all our public toilets in due course to have them upgraded. But I'm very content. Obviously, Phil has explained the repairs and maintenance due to, I think, the bank steps and the work in the Dornoch Burn. And these are little points which will come up at community council meetings. So I'll expect, I would request a full briefing on the nuts and bolts of it prior to the next community council meeting, so we're totally prepared for the questions which will come our way. But I think we're in a good place, a lot of good projects happening, and very well supported by the Common Good Fund. It's working hard. Thank you.
Jim, I don't see any hands up. So there's no questions. We are asked to consider things. Consider the Dornoch Common Good Fund annual report and accounts. Agree the Dornoch Common Good Fund annual budget. Consider the position of the Dornoch Common Good Fund out to a Q3 monitoring statement against budget. We're happy to do that, members.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on, we've got on to 8, which I believe is the last item as the minutes of the previous meeting. Do you have any issue or concern with these minutes? I have to approve them.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, members. That brings us to the end of our meeting, and apologies for my audio problems. And thank you for sticking with what I've been battling with them. I'll try and do something to improve it for future reference. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Richard. You fought on valiantly. Well done.
Well done, Richard. Got there.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.
Bye.